Hey everyone. Ooh, am I here? I am. I have to wait a little bit for other people to join me. Hi, Jane. I'm trying to get this all situated here. I had to see what it looked like because this is the first time I'm streaming through OBS. And you can see how I have a new overlay here. And I actually just changed some things to add some Game of Thrones stuff to get everyone in the mood. But I had to check to make sure it looked okay. So now I need to go back to my other screen. I hope everyone's having a lovely Saturday. Pretty purple. Yep, I love purple's my favorite color. All variations of it. The purple doesn't really go with the Game of Thrones theme. It's a little too flowery and pretty for Game of Thrones. But I wasn't going to change all that. I don't have any other overlay. Oh, it's Sunday there. That's right. You're ahead of us. Way ahead of us. Never watch. How have you never watched Game of Thrones? Come on now. That's just silly. I mean, I will admit that it's probably not for everybody. It's very violent. Very violent. So if you don't like violence, then you're probably not going to like Game of Thrones. If you don't like a lot of nudity and sexual, scenes, sex scenes, and that type of stuff, yeah, you're probably not going to like Game of Thrones. I love Arya. How can you not love Arya? Oh, hi. You're in Spain again? Weren't you just there? I have to see how many people we have watching. I don't know if I can see that from here. Oh, 4 whole people. I hope I get a few more than that. So I'm just going to chat a little bit before we get started. So does everything look placed right on here on the screen? Usually I've just been using Hangouts because that's what I'm familiar with, since that's the first thing I learned because of going on other people's streams. And Hangouts is when you want to have multiple people on a stream. So this is my first time using OBS. And I'm definitely learning as I go. But hey, I'm here and it worked. So I accomplished something. And I do have to say thank you to Torres, even though he's kind of disappeared. But I have to say thank you to Torres for doing the overlay for me. That was really awesome of him to do that. The purple and the butterfly. I'm just laughing because that was Allie's thing. Allie likes butterflies. And she was with me with Torres when we were putting this together. We were all in a group chat or group phone call. And I think he did that just to annoy Allie because she loves butterflies. But it definitely looks nice with the flowers. I'm not really a flower person, but I think it's pretty. It doesn't go with Game of Thrones though. I wish I had red and black and something more medieval looking. That would have been better for Game of Thrones. Well, I don't know if anyone else is here because nobody else is talking. So for me, it's just me and you, Jane, and Georgina, but she doesn't know what we're talking about. So I'm just waiting for a few more people to say hi. I'm just going to sit here. Yes, it is a real color. And it is also what's known as the Purple Wedding for Joffrey when Joffrey died. So, hey, that's something. Hi there, angry grandma. I like that. I don't know what to call you. I'll just call you grandma. Sorry if you're not old enough to be a grandma. I was trying to think of different graphics to put up here and picked a few that I thought were interesting. I love my Valyrian steel swords. Well, and the dagger, the cat's paw dagger, of course. Yeah, Joffrey was good thing he died. He lived long enough. Terrible to say about a kid, but he did. All right, so Let's see. Do we have more people? I think you can put a ticker on here that says how many people are watching, and I have to figure that out. So I don't have to keep going back to a different screen. Okay, now we have 7 people. I know there's more that are going to be coming because I know there are more people that watch Game of Thrones. They're just late, or they weren't expecting me to be on time. I don't know, where is everybody? I don't know, because several of them said that they were gonna join us, and it's bad timing for some people, especially if you're on the West Coast, because it's probably dinner time right now. But I didn't really want to do it too late. So I'm sorry for the 7 of you that are watching. If you're bored right now, just watching me ramble on. But so anyway, okay, so a little background. I am a book reader. I'm one of those people. Not like air quoting. I know, I was thinking about that. I was actually a little early. I was sitting here like 2 minutes early, and I was like, oh, I have to kill a couple minutes before I can go live. So I would have been early, but I didn't want to start early. But as soon as it turned 7, I started streaming. But yeah, so I am a book reader, and I've read the entire series 3 times, like the whole thing, 3 times. I have read portions of it probably 100 times. It's actually the entire world that I love. Yeah, Julie, definitely me. Definitely. I am a big GOT nerd. Huge. Actually, you have to say A Song of Ice and Fire, because for those who don't know, the entire series is called A Song of Ice and Fire, and the first book is called The Game of Thrones. And so that's where they got the title for the show, but it's actually called A Song of Ice and Fire, which comes from the prophecy that is mentioned in the show. And yeah, and I mean, everybody assumes that that's referring to Jon because he literally is ice and fire, with his father being Rhaegar Targaryen for fire and Lyanna Stark being his mother for ice. Hi, Linda. I'm glad I have a moderator here. I don't think I really need you to do much, but just in case, we get a troll or something. Everybody else wasn't caught up to date on everyone else that's a mod either doesn't watch or wasn't caught up on episodes, so I didn't want to spoil them. I also have read The World of Ice and Fire and Fire and Blood, which are the history books, the fictional history books of Westeros. And I love them. I hated history in school. I really did. But I do find English history very fascinating. I love reading about English history. And Westerosi history is very similar. You'll see a lot of parallels to things that happened in from William the Conqueror and forward. Obviously the biggest one is the Wars of the Roses, that George drew a lot of inspiration from that. And so the World of Ice and Fire is actually a history of Westeros. Okay, starting back in the Dawn Age and the Age of Heroes. And for those who don't know, there is a prequel series that is in production. It hasn't started shooting yet. They're still casting, but it is in pre-production. And I forgot the name of it already because it wasn't. Crap. I'll have to look and see what it is. They just released the name a few days ago, but that's about the Age of Heroes, which isn't really it would not be my first choice. It would not be my first choice at all as far as the history of what to cover, because there are so many interesting things about the history. But that's probably going to be the easiest to do. The one that probably most people would love to see is the Dance of the Dragons, and that's the part of the history that's the Civil War, and it's similar to the Wars of the Roses. And the problem is that that's all involving dragons. There were like 20 dragons at the beginning of the dance. So, and you see how hard it was for them to do 3 dragons for this show. It's too expensive. So I don't see them ever doing the Dance of the Dragons, which is unfortunate because that is really the best, I think, historical story, the craziest and the most brutal for sure. Most of the dragons died during the Dance of the Dragons because that's when you could have dragons fighting each other. But anyway, so the Age of Heroes is the story of when, they talk about it a little bit in the show. That's the story of when the first men come to Westeros, and the children, they're battling. They have a war with the Children of the Forest, and the Children of the Forest create the first White Walker in order to help them in their war against the first men. And obviously, they made several White Walkers. For those who don't know, there is no Night King in the in the books. There's not a single creature. Like once they made one White Walker, they made several of them. So you have the White Walkers and you have the Whites. The Whites are the, you know, the armies that are raised from the dead. Those are the Whites. But the White Walkers were the ones that were created by the Children of the Forest. And the White Walkers no longer wanted to be controlled by the Children of the Forest. It's not real clear like how they did that. That's something that'll probably be explored in the show. But and then they rose up against them, and then the Children of the Forest and the First Men end up having to fight, each other. I mean, had to fight with each other, and that's all been said in the show. So I'm not really spoiling a whole lot for the prequel, because they've talked about the history of this before in the show. So that's what the prequel is going to be about, and I cannot believe I cannot remember the name of what it's called, because it was just a name that I was surprised, because I think George wanted to call it The Long Night. And which was what I think the name of the episode was this season that covered the battle. Okay, so let me see what's going on in the chat. I'm going to get to that, Jane. I like my feelings on the episode. Julie, they all say your theories are incorrect. Yeah, darn Night King. And I don't know how they're going to, the whole others thing is going to be handled differently in the books, because there is not a single leader that you can kill and then have them all fall. Not that we know of, at least. That would be new for us. That is not the way that the story's ever been told of how they were created. I also don't know if there'll be an ice dragon. It was cool for the show, but there's other ways that the wall can come down. So. And I definitely don't think Arya will be killing the Night King or be responsible for bringing an end to the Long Night. I mean, that was one of the things that did bother me with the show. I thought it was really cool that Arya got to kill the Night King. I thought it was really cool how they did it. But it really doesn't make sense in light of the fact that they spent, 7+ seasons talking about this prophecy. Melisandre's entire storyline is about fulfilling the prophecy of the prince who was promised, and he was going to be the one that put an end to the Long Night and stopped the others from invading the rest of the country, the dead from living. And they just threw that all out the window when Arya killed him. So I thought it was cool, but it really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me at all, because it's like, okay, well, now what does Jon do? Because that was Jon's like destiny, or Dany's. They do say that in High Valyrian that there's no gender attached to the prophecy. So it could be a prince or a princess who was promised. So it definitely went a different direction than I thought. I drink and I know things. That is my favorite quote from the show. This is what I do. I drink and I know things. I love it. Even though I have been disappointed with what they've done with Tyrion the last couple of seasons. Tyrion is supposed to be the cleverest for sure of all the Lannisters, but just in general, he's supposed to be one of the smartest people in Westeros. And they have really made him look like an idiot the last couple of seasons. Like, he's basically wrong about everything. He's screwing up left and right. And it's just not true to his character. Like what Tyrion always had going for him is that he could outwit, everybody. That's how he's still alive. He's gotten by because he's very quick-witted. He can think on his feet. He's very smart. And I think they just made him kind of look like a fool in the last couple of seasons. And I don't like that. And Tyrion's one of my favorite characters. Yeah, so I think they're fooling everyone. A Song of Ice and Fire is about Arya. She killed ice and fire. Dany, that would be interesting, except for the fact that I'm pretty sure that the showrunners have said that the ultimate ending is going to be the same as what Martin has planned. Just the journey getting there is going to be completely different. Thank God. And I'm not sure she's going to kill Dany. I mean, I think that there's a possibility. They're certainly setting it up like that, because why else have Arya come down to King's Landing with the intention of killing Cersei, and then all of a sudden have her just like change her mind and be like, you know what? No, never mind. I'm not going to do it. Thanks, Sandor. Which again was a little out of character for her. She's usually very single-minded. She's very, very like driven to accomplish her goal. But I think they did that because they wanted her to be within King's Landing when this all happened. So she witnessed firsthand the killing, the tragedy of it, innocent people, children, women and children dying, that were just, running for their lives. I think they wanted Arya to witness that, to give her a reason to kill Dany, or definitely for sure have a problem with her. And that also goes along with the prophecy from Melisandre. Not necessarily prophecy, but what she said to Arya when she said that, you will kill those with brown eyes and blue eyes, which we already saw with the Night King, and green eyes. And in the show, Dany has green eyes. In the book, she has purple. But in the show, she has green eyes. And that part from Melisandre is not even in the book. I mean, Arya and Melisandre actually never even meet in the book. So it's very weird. But that's possible. It's also possible that Arya might be the one to kill Drogon. Oh, I didn't say anything to Eric Cozy because I figured he would see it in my group if I posted it, or on Twitter. Yeah, so maybe he'll be around. He'll be along eventually. I don't know what he's up to today. So yeah, Arya might be the only one that would be able to kill Drogon, because she could use Dany's face. Now, the understanding has always been that the person has to be dead, obviously. So if Dany does get killed, then Arya could use her face to sneak up on Drogon. And really, now all the scorpions are gone as far as we know, unless there's one being hidden somewhere. But dragons are vulnerable. And this is, again, knowing part of the history, is that dragons can be killed through the eye. That's where they're vulnerable. Now, granted, the first dragon that was killed in that fashion, it was still like a scorpion bolt, but it was smaller than the ones that were built for now. Though it wasn't as big, but it was still kind of an enhanced crossbow that took out the first dragon. No, he does like this. Yeah, I know he does. I know, because we were talking about that, because we scheduled Mammothon. The last hour was during Game of Thrones, and like all of us were like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that." Let's see. Okay, so anyway, so the first dragon was killed with a bolt through the eye. So that is possible. That was Meraxes. That was Queen Rhaenys's dragon, who was a Rhaenys. She was one of Aegon the Conqueror's sister wives. He had 2 sister wives, and they all had dragons. And one of the things I have been thinking about is that I'm not sure there's going to be an Iron Throne. I really don't. The way things were destroyed, I'm not sure there is going to be an Iron Throne and one person to sit it. I think it's interesting that Dany has been compared, even in the show, has been compared a lot to Aegon the Conqueror, because she had 3 dragons, just like Aegon had 3 dragons. Now, granted, he had his sisters, as riders as well, but she had 3 dragons on her own, and she's coming from Essos to conquer. And, Dany didn't necessarily want to conquer, but that's the way she's going to have to go about it, obviously. So one thing about George Martin, is that he likes parallels. He's a very big believer in history repeating itself, or to have things that come full circle, or to just be like parallels between the past and present. And I thought it would be somewhat poetic if Dany had been compared so many times to Aegon the Conqueror, but Aegon the Conqueror came to Westeros with 3 dragons and conquered it, united the 7 kingdoms. So I thought it'd be somewhat poetic if Dany came to Westeros with 3 dragons and ended up splitting the 7 kingdoms and undoing 300 years of what Targaryen rule had accomplished. Especially since that was her singular goal. It's like, I'm going to be the queen of the 7 kingdoms. I mean, and it would be very tragic for her to end up destroying the very thing she's wanted her entire life. And I know Martin does he says that things are always bittersweet, and so I know he likes these tragic ironies and things like that. So that's something that I've been thinking about, that I thought, again, would just be very poetic in a way, like. Yeah, there's been, James was talking about spoilers, and there have been leaks, but some of the leaks are fake. So we really don't know which ones, are real and not, but I've avoided them. at all costs. I don't even the YouTube streams I watch. I don't look at the chat at all because they all end up getting trolls that are trying to spoil it. And I don't really understand that. And that's why I'm glad that Linda is here at least, because I figured I don't think I'm gonna have that many people in here that I need to worry about someone coming in and trying to spoil something. But you never know. So I'm glad that I have Ahmad here so that in case anyone tries to do that, they can be taken or kicked out and blocked right away. But I don't think that will happen because again, I only have like, I don't even know how many people are watching now. Not that many. I can look. It's like how many people do I have now? 8. Oh, I have one more has come in. I can't believe that people would rather talk about legal stuff than they would talk about Game of Thrones. I would much rather talk about Game of Thrones. So one of the things I want to say is that I have not been a fan of this season overall. Misty. I'm glad you're here. I have not been a fan of the season. And yeah, it is hard when you read the books, and so much about what I love about the books is the journey. You know, it's not so much about the destination, it's the journey to get there. And this season has seemed so rushed compared to every other season. Like any other season, Varys's betrayal would have taken an entire season to develop, and then he would have been maybe executed in the finale. And this time it's like 5 seconds. And, just everything has been like so rushed. And I think that has really hurt the storytelling, and it's really just not made a whole lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, Gendry, that's why, okay, I did say that a while ago that I thought that Gendry was one of the people that was safe, that was not going to die, just because, again, of him being, I thought that he'd be legitimized and he'd be the Lord of Storm's End. And that's exactly what happened. It just happened earlier than I thought. Because technically, by legitimizing Gendry, she's actually given him a claim to the throne because he's Robert Baratheon's now true heir. So, but, they're kind of just glossing over that. They're not bringing that up in the show. And I don't think Gendry would do anything. But it is interesting that she would legitimize him prior to her winning because he has a claim to the throne. Look at how worried she is about Jon's claim to the throne. Well, Gendry's got a really good claim now that he's legitimized. And I've thought about that, but Gendry would never sit on the throne because he has no clue how to rule. It would be funny, though. The things that I have not liked are, like I said, the stuff that's rushed. Last episode, okay, so I was one of those people that pretty much hated the last episode. And I get kind of annoyed when people say, well, if you didn't see this coming, you weren't paying attention, or this has been foreshadowed. Yes and no. Dany has always shown the tendency to be able to, light up a lot of people when she doesn't get her way, when they don't do what she wants them to do. That has been foreshadowed. Dany has never had problem just, leashing the dragons, like on everybody, like unleashing the dragons, on everybody. And having them just destroyed in sack cities. That's not a problem. The problem is that the one thing that is out of character for Dany is to not only kill innocent people, that's one part, but the part that makes it really bad was that it was after they surrendered. That is the part that I do not get. It makes no sense to me. There's been nothing in Dany's past that has suggested that she would just go ape shit and kill a bunch of people after they've surrendered to her, because that's always what she wanted. She wanted them to bend the knee. And when they essentially do, they throw down their arms and they've surrendered, and then she just goes and kills them all. That part, I don't believe for a second was foreshadowed. Yes, she said that she would bring fire and blood, which are the Targaryen words. And she said that she'd burn cities to the ground. But never once did she mean after they've surrendered. She doesn't want to kill her people after she's already, their leader. She means she always killed people that were bad. Never anybody that was good. She locked Drogon up when he killed a little girl. Yeah, and so that part just does not ring true to me at all. Now, I'm also disappointed with them going the Mad Queen route just because it's so obvious. It's such an obvious thing to happen that I was kind of hoping that they would do something a little different. We already had a Mad Queen in Cersei. I mean, Cersei blew up the Sept of Baelor and killed how many people with wildfire? So, I mean, now you're just trading one Mad Queen for the other. And I don't actually consider Dany a Mad Queen. I think that she got pissed off, which that doesn't really make sense either, because her big motivation is supposedly that they don't love her. Well, give them 5 seconds to get to know you. She has never publicly spoken to the people at all. You know, she came in, you know, to Dragonstone, and then she had the one battle, the Field of Fire in the Reach, where, yes, she killed a lot of people, but she's never once addressed the public, her people. And so she's complaining that they don't love her. I'm like, well, they don't know you. Every other time Dany's come to a new city, whatever, to you know, basically to conquer it, she's addressed the people. And she said, this is what I want for you. This is what my goal is. I want to make this a better place. I want the people to be free. You know, I no longer want people to be oppressed. I want to, you know, basically get rid of the slavers and the oppressors. This time she hasn't done that. She hasn't done anything like that. So for her to say that, like, well, they don't love her. Well, they don't know you. I mean, I just thought that was a dumb motivation. It really was. Now I can understand with her losing Jorah and then losing Missandei so close after that, but it's not like Dany hasn't suffered a lot of losses. You know, I mean, she has. Everybody has. So I still don't think her losing essentially her two best friends is going to be enough for her to just want to kill like thousands of innocent people. I just don't. And people keep saying like, oh, it's foreshadowed. Oh, so some stuff was, but not all of it. A lot of it is completely out of character, and I think it ruins her character arc completely. And don't get me started on Jaime, because I think they just threw 70 seasons of his character out the window. I do not see that happening in the books at all. But I mean, it could. I could see Jaime maybe going back to Cersei, but I don't think he'll. If anything, it would be he'll kill her. He won't. I mean, that's kind of what I expected to happen in the show, and I was kind of disappointed. I thought Cersei got off way too easy. And it didn't make sense also that Dany was just using Drogon to just destroy the streets of King's Landing. She knew where Cersei was. She knew she was in the Red Keep, and she had a problem with 4 people, and that was, you know, Cersei, Euron Greyjoy, Qyburn, and the Mountain. Those are the 4 people that she really had a problem with. They were all, other than Mountain, they were, you know, I mean, other than Euron Greyjoy, they were all in the Red Keep. So why did she take so long? Drogon definitely had to take out the Scorpions. There was no choice in that. But for her to not go to the Red Keep immediately after that and lay waste to the castle, the place where Cersei is, you know, that is what bothered me. It was like, she didn't have to do this. You know, like she could have just went and killed the person that she wanted to kill. I wonder if they did the obvious in episode 5 because they're going to do the not so obvious in episode 6. I hope so. I really do. I really hope so. I mean, I guess you can say it's not obvious because I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Essentially, what I thought was going to happen is already not going to happen. So I hope they do. They hope they throw in a wrench somewhere, because I just think I don't think it's been as creative. I don't think there has been like too many shocking moments. I don't know. I don't think what Dany did was shocking. I just thought it was just stupid. That was my opinion of it. Also, the fact that when characters do things or don't do things that don't make sense, like then that bothers me. Qyburn, a man who is always 2 steps ahead. Again, very smart, very clever. You don't think there would have been a plan to get Cersei out of the Red Keep? Being that he was in the dungeons all the time, he definitely would have known about that secret entrance. Absolutely, without a doubt. He would have known about that. So why he wouldn't have had the plan to get Cersei out of the castle using, you know, the secret entrance and have a boat waiting, that I don't get at all. His big plan was, well, let's go to Maegor's Holdfast. Seriously? Like, Maegor's Holdfast is essentially like a castle inside a castle. And it was built by Maegor the Cruel, which is why he needed a very secure place, because he was a very cruel king. And it's surrounded by moats and spikes. That's why it's safer than the Red Keep as far as keeping people out. but that's not going to work on dragons. Moats and spikes do not matter to dragons. They fly above that. So Maegor's holdfast would not have helped her any more than being in the Red Keep. So I thought it was stupid that Qyburn would have already had that as an escape plan. And again, it doesn't really change anything. It's just like it doesn't make sense to me, you know. And if you're annoyed because I'm like picking on things, like, well, I mean, it's just like I'm just saying my feelings on it. If you feel differently, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. That's I'm just like because maybe some people don't think of these things, and that's why I say this is what bothered me. Now that being said, this season I thought it has had a lot of great moments. Episode 2 is actually one of my favorite episodes ever of the series. You know, with all the action and everything, those quiet moments between the characters, and that's why I think I've been so pissed about the kind of throwing out some of the character arcs because that last night was so great. You know, before the battle. Say Jon and Dany die. What will Westeros do with all the Unsullied and Dothraki? Which is way more than, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing too. I mean, but that's been said like right from the beginning. It's like, what are she going to do with the Dothraki once she conquers? You know, like the Sullied are meant to be kind of a silent army. The Dothrakis are not. They are conquerors themselves. You know, they're similar to the Huns. You know that they are not going to stop raping, reaving, pillaging. I mean, that's what they do. How were they going to be handled, you know, once they were in Westeros? They're not a civilized people. And so, yeah, again, those are things that I don't think they're going to have time to address in the show. I really don't. I think there's so many things that we want to know that are not going to be addressed in the show. I'm going to go back a second to what I was saying, that I loved episode 2. One of my favorite scenes ever is the scene where they were all sitting by the fire and drinking and talking, and then Pod sang Jenny's song. And I wasn't sure at first if that was just a nod to the book readers or if it had some meaning, because Jenny's song actually could have some bearing on a lot of different characters. And it's nothing that's spoilery. It's just things that could have, like, that made me speculate about things that I don't think are going to happen now. Jenny of Oldstones was kind of a strange girl with flowers in her hair that lived in the Oldstones, which is in the Riverlands. And Duncan, okay, the oldest son and heir of Aegon V was called Duncan the Small. He was named after Duncan the Tall, who was Aegon V's best friend and his hand. And he was I think he was hand and he was the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Both, I think. Yeah. And Duncan the Small obviously was the heir to the throne. Well, he had an arranged marriage. He was betrothed to a Baratheon. And instead, he fell in love with Jenny of Oldstones. And he screwed everything up, kind of similar to what Robb Stark did, by marrying a commoner without anybody knowing. And it caused a lot of problems. And his father was furious. And in Aegon V, it's funny because he actually married for love. So I think he came around, he understood in the end, but it caused a problem for him because now he pissed off the Baratheon family. And so essentially Duncan abdicated the throne. He gave it up for love. And so that's where I was thinking about the parallels. Is it going to be Dany or Jon having to give up the throne for love? You know, and this is what I was thinking about immediately after the second episode. So that's not including what happened after that. One of the other thing is, though, sadly, is that Duncan the Small died shortly after. And Jenny may have died too, because we don't really know what happened to her. But Duncan died at the tragedy at Summerhall, along with Duncan the Tall and his father, Aegon V. And that's where Rhaegar was actually born. Rhaegar was born during this fire, this tragedy, where his father or his grandfather died, and you know, Duncan the Tall died, and Duncan the Small. And so it was just the tragedy of it, that he married for love. He was happy. He was willing to give up the throne. He gave up everything for her. And then he died in a stupid fire. So that was another thing I was thinking. I was like, okay, so is there going to be a parallel that, you know, Jon is going to give up the throne for Dany, which essentially he is, but he never wanted it. Like, he was never the heir to begin with. So he's giving up something that he never really had to begin with. But then was it going to be this tragedy of them being happy and thinking they could be together, and then one of them dies? Well, I think that's out the window now, because I don't think I mean, I don't think there's going to be any giving up anything for love after this last episode. Also, Jenny of Oldstones, and this is always very interesting to me. Like I said, there's a lot of connections to a lot of characters. Jenny of Oldstones is the one who brought the Wood Witch, or the ghost of High Heart is what she called. Yeah, she was a witch to court, and the ghost of High Heart, this witch, is the one who first made the prophecy about the prince who was promised, and that's why it became kind of an obsession with the Targaryen family. But she's the one that did that, and again, that references Jon and Dany. So again, interesting to bring up Jenny for that reason, because she's the one that's responsible for bringing that prophecy to the family and to the realm in general. And then there's also the fact that Pod is singing this song with Brienne there when Duncan the Tall is an ancestor of Brienne's. She might not even know it, but he is. So there was a lot of connections there that I loved. And so I love that part. And I just love that scene in general. Would it be ironic if Sansa and Tyrion end up ruling the Seven Kingdoms? And I kind of thought about that with the fact that when they had that little talk about marriage, and all Sansa really said was that your queen would never approve. She didn't say, I would never marry you. Like, she never said anything like that. She just said that your queen would never approve of that. So I thought about that. It's like, is there a chance that Sansa and Tyrion may get together after all? First, Tyrion's got to live. I always thought that Tyrion was going to be the one that was going to survive. But Dany was very clear, if he made another error, it was going to be the last one he was going to make. I would say that him releasing his brother would probably, she'd say that he made another mistake. Yeah. So I still think Tyrion can get out of it, because Dany's going to have a lot of things to worry about. She's going to have a lot to deal with. She's got Jon for sure that is not happy. And I don't know what the fallout's going to be there. I don't know if he's going to just leave her, if he's going to kill her, if he's going to change his mind and claim the throne. Not really sure, because again, I don't think there's really going to be a throne afterward. I mean, there could be, but I don't really know who's going to sit on it at this point, because the realm is in such chaos. And even Jon is such a moral, upstanding character that it would seem like he would be a great king. But that's not always the makings of a good king. Obviously, you want a king that's moral, but you also want them to be smart and make good decisions. Jon has made a lot of bad decisions. Jon is alive pretty much because he's lucky. Like, so many times he has been like on the verge of being, and he actually did get killed. I mean, Jon's only time of ruling over other people was when he was Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and he was killed like shortly afterward because his people hated him. So that doesn't really inspire a lot of faith in ruling the entire Seven Kingdoms. And I mean, he is like morally just, but that also makes him very hard. It makes it very hard for him to make tough decisions. You saw how he was when he had to hang the Night's Watchman that stabbed him, but he felt terrible about it afterward. He's brought it up several times. Well, you kind of got to get over that kind of thing. Treason is treason. The punishment for treason is death, is execution. Now, Jon didn't have an out, because in most cases, when somebody is going to be executed or marked for death, they're given the option to take the black and to go to the wall, which most people take them up on because they don't want to die. Well, Jon didn't have that option because they were already taken the black, and they broke those vows. So what is the next consequence? Would be death. And we saw that from the very first episode, when the member of the Night's Watch, because of the others, freaked out and he deserted. And when they caught up with him, Ned Stark executed him, took his head off, very first episode. So it's already been established that you got to do that sometimes. And I think Jon very much struggles with that. He still doesn't struggle with killing people when he needs to, but making those decisions are things that Jon struggles with. I also don't think that Jaime is going to kill Euron Greyjoy. That's the other thing that irritated me. Okay, was that it really should have been Yara. I'm just saying. Like, it's really just not that gratifying to have Jaime kill Euron. It really isn't. We needed Yara. We needed a Greyjoy to kill Euron, because he killed their father. I mean, like, he kidnapped them. He tried to have them killed several times. And he did worse in the book. He's actually worse in the book, if you can believe it. And so it just seems like it would be justified for Yara to kill him. And then there's the fact that one of the things that has been like a problem through the entire series is Dany not having enough people, not having a big enough military force to take on Cersei. When they had the decimation of her army at Winterfell, I mean, that was one of the things that Sansa was saying. Like, we didn't have enough people before. Now we really don't have enough people. And the ones we do have are injured. They need to rest. And Dany's like, no, we're going to go forward. And they mentioned about how, well, the Prince of Dorne is going to come to your aid. Hello, Prince of Dorne? Okay. Who is that now? Like, who did they make who's the new Prince of Dorne? So I expected to see something with that. Didn't happen. And then they talked about how Yara had at least some of a fleet. And yet, when it came time to attack King's Landing, where were all these people? Where was Yara? I mean, I thought for sure that she was going to be the one that was going to take down Euron's ships and take down Euron. Nowhere to be found. You know, where was the Prince of Dorne and all his troops? Nowhere to be found. But yet this has been like this ongoing problem since the very episode 1 of the series, that Dany needed to find an army. Apparently she didn't. She should have come over a long time ago, because apparently she didn't need an army. Because they kept complaining that she didn't have one, and apparently it wasn't necessary, and none of them showed up. I mean, Gendry wasn't there fighting. I mean, he's the Lord of Storm's End, so every fighter in the Stormlands should have been with him. You know, like, so... Okay, enough with that. Like I said, I don't want to be one of those people that's just sitting there complaining, but I'm just trying to explain some of the things I had issues with. The Prince of Dorne is right. If it's not going to be a Martell, now again, one of the biggest complaints from anybody who's read the books is how they botched the Dorne storyline so badly. It's a cool storyline in the books, and they just ruined it from day one. They made Oberyn. Like, you know, the Red Viper was exactly what he should be. And then after that, it just went downhill with the introduction of the Sand Snakes and Ellaria Sand. She actually was a peaceful person. She didn't want vengeance. She wanted the fighting to end. And here she's just like out for blood. But they gotten rid of entire characters. Trystane was not the heir. And he has older siblings. And so who is going to be the prince? I don't know. Are there any Martells left? If not, the Ironwoods would probably be the next biggest family in Dorne. But yeah, I thought it was weird that they just randomly mentioned the Prince of Dorne when we've never heard that there was a new prince. She has her dragon. That's her army. Well, yeah, needed more support. She needed more people. And then in the end, it was like the people even that she did have were nowhere to be found. And she beat them easily with just one dragon, not even the other two. So yeah, I mean, it's just, again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Yeah, that's what she needed. She needed one dragon. And that does come. The falling out of the sky from way up, and she came out through the sun so that she couldn't be seen, so Euron couldn't be seen. That actually is a callback to Aegon the Conqueror, because he did that to take the Castle Harrenhal, where he wanted to do a sneak attack, which is hard to do with a dragon. They're kind of loud. And he did the same type of thing. He flew really high and then came down through the clouds, and so that they didn't even see him coming. I like to see Drogon kill Dany. I don't see that happening. And there's the thing of, will Drogon even die? You know, I said dragons are not easy to kill, despite what they've said in the show. Now, granted, these dragons are young. Again, when Aegon the Conqueror came, Balerion the Dread was over 100 years old already. I think that he was around 200 years old when he died. And a dragon's scales get tougher as they get older. So those scorpion bolts would not even hurt him or the other two dragons, even though they were a little bit younger. But it was because Meraxes was hit in the eye. That's why she died, and took Queen Rhaenys with her. But these dragons are younger, so I guess they're susceptible to these bolts. But that should mean that they're still susceptible if they get shot in the eye. But it's not like if Dany dies, there can't be another dragon rider. dragon, Balerion the Dread, you know, who was Aegon the Conqueror's dragon, was ridden by um, his grandson, you know, Maegor the Cruel, and he was ridden by I can't remember who else rode him later on, but most of these dragons have had multiple riders once their regular rider dies. So it's not like a dragon can't have multiple riders and it's like one rider for life. That's not true. But as long as their rider is alive, then they have a problem with somebody else jumping on their back. It's so cute. My theme, a guy named Torres made it for me, and we didn't get to complete it. So I haven't talked to him, so I don't know if we will. But I kind of just changed things around a little bit myself, and then I just added some Game of Thrones stuff to it for today. Obviously, I'll change that once I do my regular stuff. But thanks, yeah. I said purple's my favorite color, so I want to do some purple stuff and have something cute. I hate just seeing me in this little like screen, this big screen, just talking. So I thought, oh, it's a little more visually cute. And with this, I can actually see the chat too, since the chat's on the screen. So I can see the chat. I just have to go to a different window if I want to respond to anybody, but I can respond by talking. Jon Snow will take over Drogon. He certainly could. He certainly could. I was a little disappointed that he didn't have more time with Rhaegal. You know, and that was the other thing too. That was like that did bother me is that no, you don't just tell someone get on a dragon. Okay, she did not know that Jon had Targaryen blood. He would have got killed if he didn't. That should have been a clue to her right there that something was up because unless you have some Targaryen blood, you're not supposed to be able to ride a dragon. Yeah, because even the dragon riders that weren't Targaryens, they were suspected to have been bastards at one time that had probably been, you know, born of a Targaryen king or Targaryen in the past, you know, when they were descendants. So they had at least a drop of king's blood in them because there were 3 or 4 dragon riders that actually did ride the dragons during the Dance of the Dragons. But hundreds were killed in the process of trying to find people to ride these dragons. Like they don't just let anybody jump on their back. So that was kind of bothering me too. And Danny's like, hang on. Also, the dragons have saddles in the books. They don't just ride on them bareback. No, they don't do that. What is the bittersweet ending I would like? Well, as I said before, what I thought would be, I actually would like to see it separated. So it would be bittersweet that, you know, she came to reunite people and she ended up splitting them up. But I think it would actually be better for the realm to go back to being like, you know, sort of like a republic and having, you know, it would actually have to be split up a little bit because when Aegon the Conqueror came, you had the king in the north, you had the king of the Mountain and Vale. Now, that would be a little worrisome right now because right now, the Lord of the Vale is Robin Arryn. So we need a regency there still, at least probably forever. And I don't know if he's ever going to bear children, but that would be a problem. So, but you had the king of the Mountain and the Vale. You had the Storm King in the Stormlands, and then you had the king of the Reach. And then Dorne was always been princess and prince of princes. They never had a king. And then you had the king of the Rock, which is Casterly Rock in the Westerlands. And then you had the king of the rivers and islands, or the isles and rivers, which would have to be separated now because the Iron Islands and the Riverlands are very separate now. So you probably need to have 2 kings there. And again, it doesn't really instill much faith that Edmure Tully would probably be the king then of the Riverlands. Yeah, not great. But he did have a kid, so maybe there's hope there. I don't know. Yeah, I said if Dany had some inkling, no, clearly she didn't, but she should have. Again, I'm pretty sure she knows the history of her family. And that is one thing that is very well established. Many, many, many people have died just approaching the dragons if they did not have a drop of Targaryen blood in them. And there's only one person that I think they weren't sure of, but they assumed somewhere in her line she must have had Targaryen blood. Sorry. Do you think Sansa, Sam, Bran, Robin, Bran, Bronn, Edmure, all the others will be in the final episode? No. I think there's gonna be a lot. Like right now, I'm not sure if the people that he said goodbye to, like Tormund and Sam and Brienne, um, Gendry, like I'm not sure if any of them are gonna be in it, which doesn't make sense. The only way I could see it now would be if they do some kind of epilogue, which I would actually really like seeing because I'd like to see where things end up, how people end up. That would be nice. I don't know. I used to think there's no way Arya was going to survive. I still don't know if she will or not because it's very hard to know what to do with her when there's during peacetime. She enjoys killing. It's her thing. Now she does want to kill innocent people, but killing bad people. But a need for an assassin just isn't as strong during peacetime. So I don't know. I would like to see her. I mean, I know she can't be a lady. I mean, she's not. That's not her. But I don't know why she couldn't have even told Gendry, like, well, okay, look, I'm not a lady. Okay. Like, I'd love to be with you, but I gotta be me. And so if you can have a wife that is going to be like training women in fighting and doing it, well, fine, then we can be married. I would have liked to sing that instead of her just saying like, not a lady, later. The only person I think Sansa is going to live, period. I don't think there's a chance that Sansa's going to be killed at all. I don't know if she's going to end up being Queen of the North. I don't think she's going to be on the Iron Throne, but, she could be. I mean, certainly. I mean, a lot of people lately have been talking about the possibility of Bran being on the Iron Throne, and I honestly don't believe that. And I don't think that's possible because Bran already said he can't even be Lord of Winterfell. And he's the one that described himself by saying, like, I'm not even a person. That's not really great criteria to be a king. I just don't, and he doesn't know how to interact with people. So I really don't understand why there's this big push now saying that Bran's going to end up on the Iron Throne. I just don't see it. I don't know how it would be a possibility. And with the way they did the whole Night King thing, I'm not even sure Bran's purpose is anymore because he was not helpful. He really was never helpful. Like it's very frustrating for Bran to know so much and say so little. Because I think we kind of count on Bran to be like the narrator, to give the exposition for the things that we don't understand. Instead, he just said nothing. Like, why was the Night King after him? I know they said that Bran was the memory, and the Night King wanted to get rid of the person who had the memories of the history. Really, though, that's the only reason. It seems kind of lame. I mean, if you're gonna kill all the people, they're all gonna be undead. Who cares? And that is literally like the only reason they really gave in the show. And I was like, I don't like that. I mean, there's got to be a different reason why he was targeting Bran and why Bran was so important, other than being the three-eyed raven or three-eyed crow in the book. But I don't know why they changed that either. But so it's like, okay, Bran, either stop being helpful. Like, when you see these things, clearly he knew, and they talk about how Bran doesn't see the future, yet I think he knows things are going to happen. I mean, he's the one that gave the cat's paw dagger to Arya, and he gave it to her in the same spot that she ended up killing the Night King with it. I just have a hard time believing Bran didn't foresee all of this and knew it had to happen this way. Because he certainly didn't seem scared after Theon was killed and the Night King was approaching him. He didn't seem scared. He didn't seem worried at all. So did he know what was going to happen? And is that what made him give Arya the blade to begin with? I'm not sure, but I just feel like Bran should start doing something. Like, start being helpful, dude. Like, really. Yeah, and she could try to kill Drogon and be killed. Arya could be killed trying to kill Drogon. Who knows? Vegas odds favor Bran. Yeah, see, I don't get that. And I could be totally wrong, but it just, again, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense based on things that Bran has already said. And again, I mean, he freaks people out. Like people can't have a conversation with him. Anything. And he's going to be the king of the people. I just don't see it. I really don't. And I don't know what's going to happen with some of the other characters. Like Bronn, I mean, just showed up at Winterfell with a crossbow and nobody cared. But he's not going to get Highgarden. Okay, Jaime's dead now, or we assume he's dead now. And Tyrion is in no position to be giving castles to anybody. So I really don't know what Bronn's purpose is at this point. I don't know. I mean, I think they have to have him on again, but what's he going to do other than demand a castle? You know, I don't see that. Yeah, he said that no one is going to kill the Night King, and Arya is no one. Yes, that is true. So that's why I said I don't really buy the fact that Bran doesn't see the future. I think he does, but and it's that whole thing with, just like with time travel, when they say we can't tell you what's going to happen because then you might do something different. That's fine, but afterward, can you clue people in? Like, can you give them some hint of some things? Um, I don't know. I just think that a lot of the motivations and things we are missing, we're not getting. And that's where Bran should be coming in. And instead, even like during the battle, I've got to go now. Poor Theon. So it's like, where are you going? You're not here. Where are you going? And again, I mean, he was just scouting really and using the Ravens to scout, but I don't know. Bran's just so weird. I mean, that's the thing. Like I said, I don't see anybody being happy with having this weird kid be their king. I want Bronn to get the twins. Yeah, Bronn getting the twins would make a lot more sense than getting Highgarden. I say give Highgarden to Davos. I he is one of my favorite characters, and I have been saying for a while now, like I don't care if everybody dies as long as Davos lives. I seriously don't. If Davos dies, that's it. I'm gonna have like a meltdown. I'm gonna completely have a meltdown. He is one of my favorite characters. I mean, I go back and forth. My three favorite characters are Tyrion, Jaime, and Davos, and so it kind of goes back and forth. But I just love Davos. I do. He's probably my favorite more often than not. Yeah, and Bran did have the yeah, we did see that the glimpse of the dragon shadow and the ash, which we assume is ash. People thought was snow, but it always made more sense that it was going to be ash falling over the Iron Throne, and and the burn them all that was being said. Now that was unclear. Is that from the Mad King, or is that something that Dany was going to say, or Cersei? Like, where did the burn them all come from? But I think it was a mixture of past and future. So Bran definitely sees some stuff. I think Bran is going to have to go back to that cave and hook up to the Weirwood network like the old three-eyed crow, and he's just going to grow with the tree. That's probably what's going to happen to Bran. Even though if they don't even know if they need him like that anymore. I mean, do we need a wall still? Do we need to repair the wall? Do we need a Night's Watch if the threat to the north is gone? Now, I do not think it's going to end up being gone because, again, history tends to repeat themselves. So I think that it's going to maybe be set up that eventually they could come back in some way, somehow. I don't know. Um, we'll see. Yeah. He said something about Dany making Gendry Lord of Storm's End. He also had a conversation with Bran. Yeah, that's one thing that I hope they do address is what was this conversation between Tyrion and Bran? Because Bran doesn't talk to anybody, but he told Tyrion something. I don't really know what it is, and that is one of those things that they better answer. Because I'll be pissed if they don't. Because there clearly was something that was said. Could the dragon glass that's what be used to create a new Night King? Um, well, there's a certain amount of magic. I mean, the children of the forest are magical creatures, and they use pure dragon glass to create the Night King, and that's how they. Well, I don't think if we even know for sure how they created the others yet in the book. I don't think we know yet. I get things mixed up because it's been a few years since I read the books, and I've been meaning to reread them, but I'm so busy reading legal stuff all the time. I have not been able to read, and that really makes me mad. I need to sit down and reread the books because I am getting confused a lot between book canon and show canon, and I need to get that straight in my head. Um, and there's, like I said, there's lots of things from the show that were that were completely dropped from the books, completely storylines, people, like so the whole end game. Like I said, how you're going to get there, and I think there's characters that have been switched for each other. So yeah, I don't know. One of the good things is that this is the way I look at it. yeah, the show is kind of disappointing in some ways because they veer from the book so much. And it's very clear when it happens. George R. R. Martin stopped being as involved after season 5 because he wanted to focus on writing The Winds of Winter. Up to that point, he had really been involved in the storyline. He'd written a script every year. He stepped back from the show. And I think you can really tell. I think 6, but especially 7 and 8, you can tell that they've suffered from not having his guidance. But so wait, hold on. I totally lost my train of thought now. Davos for King, yeah. I totally lost my thought where I was going with that. I'm trying to see what I was saying. King. Oh yeah, so okay, so the dragon glass, yeah. So I don't know what I was saying. I totally got lost in my own thing there. I do that from time to time. I'm thinking ahead and yet I'm not listening to what I'm saying. So I totally missed what I was saying. Anyone knows. Yeah, we don't know what happened with the babies. Like, did they just, I mean, it can't be just a matter of them sucking their life force from them because the baby didn't die. The baby turned. Where are all those babies? Like, do they grow like a normal rate or is that all they're for? And they just lay there staying babies forever. I don't know. Again, another question that goes completely unanswered. Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. I do that. I get in the middle of talking and then I completely forget where I was to begin with. So sorry. I'm not going to go back and watch because I know how dumb I'll look. But I do that, especially when I'm talking about this stuff because I get on tangents about things. And because I love it. Like I said, I love the history. What I love about these books is that Martin very much believes in, like I said, history repeating itself or parallels between characters, and learning from the past. Like a predictor of the future is what happened in the past. Those are things that he's very, very big on. And that's why the history is so interesting because you will see things and then you'll see, especially in the books, but you'll see later like something that'll be mentioned that'll be like a callback to something that happened like 100 years ago. And you won't notice it till you read both things and you're like, hey, I've read that before. I've seen that before. And then you realize there's a connection. That's why he's brilliant. I mean, he is absolutely brilliant. Like, don't go by the show. Like, there's a reason why these books have been out for 25 years or however long it is. No, 20, over 20 years. And people can still talk about them like every day. It's like Lord of the Rings. It's like, like that. It's a whole world. And there's so many connections everywhere. And he's expanded on the world so much. I mean, he's written huge history books. Fire and Blood is over 700 pages. And that's only part 1. It only covers, that's just on like the World of Ice and Fire is the entire history of Westeros, but abbreviated. You don't get a lot of details. You just get the broad strokes. But Fire and Blood is very detailed and it covers the reign of the Targaryen kings. And it covers from Aegon the Conqueror to the end of the regency for Aegon III. That's how far, so that's only part 1. It was over 700 pages of history. And it's fascinating. It really is. There's some parts that are kind of like, but it is fascinating. And it's kind of depressing because, my God, a lot of people died. But then you start to see parallels in between characters, like what happened then and things that are happening now. And then you kind of sit there and wonder, like, can you predict what's going to happen because of that? And I think that the show has veered so far from the books that that's just not possible now. You can still try to make comparisons of things or look for things to happen, but I think at this point it's just completely different. This is what I was saying before. I remember now what I was saying. I said that I thought it was a good thing because at first there was some concern that book readers are going to be spoiled by the show. And like I said before, I am very much a fan of the journey. I like the journey to get there. I don't really care about the end as much. I mean, obviously I want to know what happens, but I love the, just getting involved in the story, of the characters. That is all going to be different. So other than a couple key things, I know George had said that there were 3 things that he told them that would be shocking to people or be surprising, that would be spoiled from the book. The first one we know was the fact that Stannis sacrificed Shireen. That has not happened in the books yet. So that was surprising. And I was going to say I was kind of wishing that wouldn't happen, but it makes sense. The second thing was Hodor's name. George was really bummed about that. He really was upset that they were going to get to reveal that before he had a chance to. And the third one they said was towards the end of the season. So we don't know if it was like last week, what Dany did, if that was going to be the surprising thing that's going to be ruined from the books. But other than that, there's going to be so much that's different that I don't really feel like I'm getting, like, there's no point. I don't feel like there's no point in reading the books just because I know that the ending. Because hello, I've already read the books 3 times already. Like I know what they say, but I still read them anyway because you can always find something new. So that's a part. And then yet, if George doesn't finish these stupid books, like I do not have much confidence he's actually going to finish this series. At least I know that there's some ending. The show at least gives me a little bit. It gives me an ending, even if I don't like how they got there. At least I have an ending. So I don't worry about it too much. I'm actually kind of grateful that the show is going to give me some type of closure because I'm not sure that Martin's going to. There are going to be prequels. Yeah, I talked about that right in the beginning. Yeah, D&D, Dan and Dave, the showrunners, are doing a Star Wars trilogy, and that's why they want to be done with the show. Because they could have, HBO would have kept the show on as long as they wanted to go, and they wanted to be done with it. And they made the excuse that it was always going to be this long. It was always going to be, they split the third book, A Storm of Swords. They split that book. Otherwise, it was always going to be like a book a season, and then that was going to be split. So 7 books, 8 seasons. But with how rushed it is, like they absolutely could have done a few more seasons. No problem. But, I kind of understand the mentality of wanting to go out on top, but not when it sacrifices the story, which I think it has a lot because they want to be done with it. I kind of wish they would have handed it off to other showrunners. And it definitely hurt having abbreviated seasons last season and this season. And I understand it was for budgetary reasons because of the dragons and everything. But that's so hard to accept. They can't even do a dire wolf. Oh my God, Ghost. Like Ghost was a big dog. Do you remember from last season, or was it last season or 2 seasons ago when Arya ran into Nymeria? She was massive, massive, and then Ghost has always been big. And yet all of a sudden he looked like a normal dog practically. I was like, oh, come on. And then Jon didn't even say goodbye to him. So whatever. The dire wolves, I definitely hope the dire wolves are treated better in the books, and I think they will be. I think they'll be more important in the books. They kind of just want to get rid of them in the show because, Lady and Grey Wind, so Sansa's and Robb's dire wolves, were killed the way they were in the books. They were killed the same way they were on the show. But Summer and Nymeria and Ghost are all still alive. So I hope they get better treatment in the books than they did in the show because they just wanted to be rid of them. Now, so yeah, there's going to be prequels, but it's not by the same showrunners. So they're going to have different people doing them. They said they started casting. Misty, are you still there? What was the name of the prequel? You're the one that told me what it was, and I forgot already. Because it was just announced this week what the name of it was going to be. It's going to be a while before we see it, though. Probably a year or 2 before we see it, because like I said, they haven't even started shooting or anything. They're just casting still. And now, if I had to pick other things that I would rather see, well, obviously, number one would probably have to be the Dance of the Dragons, because that would be insane. That is an insane ride. It really is. But with all those dragons, they'd never have the budget to be able to do it. Unless, it's going to be 50 years from now and technology has gotten better, that it's not so expensive. But I would love to see the Dance of the Dragons played on screen. I would love to see Aegon's Conquest. The thing that started it all, really. Technically, the Age of Men that they are going to cover did start it all. But as far as the United Kingdoms, that starts with Aegon's Conquest. And that's the thing, too, about what Dany did. What Dany did in King's Landing was bad. Okay, but Aegon the Conqueror did that everywhere. Like, some castles he didn't burn because those people were smart. Like, they saw what the dragons did to other areas and other people. And they were like, okay, we bend the knee. And that is the difference. Aegon the Conqueror was, in every sense, a conqueror. He melted castles. He did, those 3 dragons did some damage, and they didn't care who they killed. Innocent people got killed. But Aegon never attacked anybody once they surrendered. Unless they turned again or something. But once they surrendered, that was it. Come out, swear your fealty to me, bend the knee, and I'll stop melting your castle. And he did. I mean, so he didn't keep burning people once they bent the knee, because again, conquerors, it's like that's what they do. Like they want to bend people to their will. They don't just want to kill everyone. How many times have they mentioned being queen of the ashes? Well, that's exactly what Dany just did. You know, and she's just thinking, because, and considering that she's already lost 2 dragons, you would think she would not be so cocky about, I have a dragon, ha ha ha, so you should all listen to me. You know, already 2 dragons were already killed. Blood Moon. Okay, thank you. Blood Moon is what the sequels or the prequels called, and I think it's a weird title. It's definitely not something I really thought of. I knew it had blood in it, but I couldn't remember what it was called. So yeah, Blood Moon is what's the name of the prequel. I would also really love to see Robert's Rebellion. That is what kicked off Game of Thrones. You know, the show and the book series was Robert's Rebellion. The end of the rebellion, obviously. Well, obviously it kicked off with Robert, like right before the end of Robert's reign, but Robert's Rebellion is what led up to all that, and the Mad King being killed and everything. So I would really love to see a prequel involving Robert's Rebellion. I actually thought that would have been probably the best choice for the first prequel, because there are no dragons. There are no dire wolves. Okay, so you're not dealing with the things that were really expensive CGI that you had to deal with in this series. So, you know, and the same is true of the Age of Men. They're not going to have to deal with that type of stuff. At least they shouldn't have to. But so I thought Robert's Rebellion would have been really interesting to see how that all played out, and how the whole thing with Rhaegar and Lyanna happened. You know, I mean, they have this whole thing with, basically in the show, they've always just said that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna and raped her, and then she died. No one ever really said about how she died until like they revealed Jon's parentage, but there's like, she died. And then Rhaegar was killed by Robert at the Battle of the Trident. And that's essentially it. You know, and Dany did talk about, I think Viserys or somebody had, or no, I think it was Barristan Selmy that told Dany about how Rhaegar was very different. He liked music and songs and poetry. And it's even speculated that Rhaegar is the one that wrote Jenny's song. Many people think he probably did, because that was his thing. And so that's what we knew about Rhaegar, you know. And then even now, we still don't know much more about him other than he didn't rape her. He married her, you know. But there's a lot about Lyanna too that's really interesting. The parallels between Arya and Lyanna are amazing. Like, Arya is Lyanna. Okay, like Lyanna didn't become an assassin, but young Arya was very much like young Lyanna, which is probably why she and Jon were always so close. They had this connection they really didn't know at the time. But she loved to ride horses. She loved to fight, sword fight. She actually went to a tournament in disguise, and did pretty well. And that's where Rhaegar, like, first, I think, really became obsessed with her, when he found out that was her. And yeah, so that was Lyanna. She was pretty awesome. Yeah, it's weird to see them together when you just had no. I would like to know more about Rhaegar and Lyanna and how that all came about, and you know, I would really like to see more of their romance. You know. Oh, thanks. Okay. Good night. So yeah, so I would like to see more of that. Now there are other prequels in the works. They did treatments for, I think, 5. And so far, Blood Moon is the only one that has gone forth into production, but some are still being considered. They haven't rejected any yet, I don't think, but they won't say what they're about. But I would say that a lot of them are about the things that I've mentioned for sure. I would like to know more about Essos, the Doom of Valyria. That would be a big one too, because that's what the Targaryens came to Westeros before the Doom, but it was because of that. Like, is it Arian? Aegon the Conqueror's father, is it Arian? Oh, God, these people, they needed to get like easier names to remember. His daughter, Dana the Dreamer, actually had a vision of the Doom, and that's why they first came to Dragonstone and brought the first dragons to Westeros, was because his daughter foresaw the Doom. And so that's why the Targaryens survived. There were other dragon families. The Targaryens were not the only ones, but they're the only ones that survived, and their dragons survived because they were forewarned to get the hell out before the doom. And so that's why that gave them, there were more powerful families than them, but that's why they survived. And so, yeah, the conquest didn't happen until Aegon got there, but they were actually settled on Dragonstone for quite a while, or for a generation before that at least. So it would be like nice to know more about Essos and about the Doom and what happened in Valyria. They just call it the Doom of Valyria. They don't really, and then there's a Century of Blood afterward, but they don't really say a whole lot. You don't really know a whole lot about it. There's an interesting, I won't say what it is in case anyone wants to read it, but there's a very interesting story, fascinating, that is in Fire and Blood that happened to one of, let's see, it was Aegon's granddaughter, I think. Can't keep them straight, especially since they keep marrying siblings. It's really hard to remember which generation people are from. Oh no, it was Jaehaerys' daughter. Yeah, it was Jaehaerys the first daughter. That's what it was. Something happened to her, and they think Valyria was involved somehow, and it's really interesting. So, how many people do I even have here? Is it still just like 10 people? 9. This is definitely going to be the least viewed video I've ever done. Come on, where are all the GOT fans? Incestuous Jen, yeah. Well, that was really interesting too in Fire and Blood. I don't think this is like a major spoiler or anything, but people were very like they did not like that Aegon the Conqueror was married to his sisters. That was new to Westeros. Like that, first of all, to be married to your sister, but then to be married to both sisters, to have 2 wives, that did not mesh with the 7, the gods, at all. But they didn't really have a choice because they were conquered. And there was actually a big uproar when Aerys, or Aenys. It's Aenys. I'm gonna say Aenys because I hate saying Aenys, but it could be pronounced that Aenys. This is Aegon the Conqueror's son. Aenys, we're gonna say, just because of that. His son and heir was Aegon, another Aegon, because they got to have 5 million of them, and he decided to marry his sister, and they were like hated because of that. Like they were loved before that, but then when they got married, the people turned on them and called them an abomination, and any children be an abomination, and it essentially cost him the throne. His brother stole it from his half brother stole it from him too, but that cost him the throne. And yet when Jaehaerys came along, Jaehaerys the First and Alysanne, their brother and sister, and yet we know that it was accepted, but we didn't know until Fire and Blood why. Well, Jaehaerys was smart, first off, but he essentially sold it to everyone that there's this doctrine of exceptionalism where they are not, the Targaryens are like gods practically. Like they don't have to abide by normal rules because they're special. Their blood is magic. And he sold that to people like, this is why. And people just were like, okay. So he married his sister because Dany's father, the Mad King, he was also married to his sister. So they still did this like many generations later. That's why Dany has no problem with sleeping with Jon, but Jon does because the North don't play like that. So they'll marry cousins. The North will marry cousins, but uncle and aunt are just nephew and aunt are a little too close. And Maegor is the only one Maegor the Cruel is the only one that tried to take multiple wives. Well, I think a couple other wanted to, but no. So that they've gotten away from. It's just the sibling thing because they wanted to keep the Targaryen blood pure. That's why they married siblings to each other. All right, so anything else we want to cover? I'm sure there's other things I was thinking about, but anyone else have anything to discuss? I mean, seriously, if you get me talking about the history, like I can sit here all day and talk because I love it. I said I don't even like history, but I love Targaryen history. It's very twisted. And I could go on and on and on, but since I only have like 9 people here, I'll talk to the 9 people that want to stick around. But but if everyone's bored with me, I'd like to know what do other people want to see happen in the finale? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think there's going to be an Iron Throne? Who do you think is going to be on it? Explain Lady Stoneheart. Okay, I was saying, like, I don't want to spoil people that might plan to read the books, and that's a big one. So I'm not going to say too much about it. Who Lady Stoneheart is, I'm not going to go into that. But Lady Stoneheart is a character that was completely left out of the show. It shocked us. Like, book readers were waiting. We were just waiting, waiting, waiting. Like, to us, that was like not as big of a moment as the Red Wedding, but this reveal of this Lady Stoneheart character was like mouth open, like ending to one of the books. And so we were waiting, and like the end of the season, we expected Lady Stoneheart to show up, and she didn't. And everybody was like, what? Because she plays such a huge part in the story. And she's the one that actually ends up wanting revenge on the Frey family for the Red Wedding. And she's the one that's going around killing Freys. They kind of gave that to Arya. She also like kind of has it out for Brienne and Jaime. Okay, like I don't want to say it too much, but and that's where Jaime and Brienne are. Like the end of the books, Brienne was captured by Lady Stoneheart, and she and Pod were hanged, except for like Lady Stoneheart. We know from some of the things that were released later that she released them, or didn't release them, but she let them live because Brienne promised to do something for her, and the promise we find out is probably going to be to deliver Jaime Lannister, because Brienne also shows up at Riverrun where Jaime is, and asks for him to come accompany her. So she's leading Jaime into a trap. So we don't know what's going to happen with that, because that's as far as it is. But Lady Stoneheart is not to be messed with, and she is out for vengeance. Oh, thank you, Linda. Love ya. Yeah, thanks for being here. I wish Olenna was still alive too. The Queen of Thorns. Come on, she was amazing. And there's another Martell in the books too. Like there's an older brother who's actually the heir. It wasn't Loras, it wasn't Margaery. It wasn't. I mean, Mace, Tyrell, their father is, but his other son is the heir, and he just was left out of the show completely. So are the heirs to Dorne. So I don't want Pod to die either. I don't really want anyone to die. I wanted Cersei to die. Now that she's dead, like Qyburn, Cersei, the Mountain, and Euron Greyjoy. Obviously, they were the last evil characters. I wanted them to die, and they did already. Not even before the last episode, so everyone else can live. That's fine. And there are people in the books that were killed a long time ago that are still alive. And there are people in the books that are still alive that were killed off in the show long before, um, like it's not just because the books haven't been finished. I mean, like where they were killed in the show, that's not what happened to them at all in the book. So yeah, they change a lot. They change a lot about what happens. I hope. I don't. I mean, I guess I think that they're probably gonna have to kill off Barristan Selmy, but I was really bummed when they killed him off in the show, because I think he had so much to offer Dany, and he was really the only one that could tell her about her family firsthand, because he was the commander, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard for her father, and knew her brother well. And he shared a little bit with her, but I really wish he would have had more of an opportunity to share more with Dany about her family. I do not want this to be a love story at all. Yeah, I don't think it will be. If anything, it's going to be like a tragedy. I mean, that's what George likes to do. Like I said, like the whole tragedy at Summerhall, was that they had this whole thing with Duncan giving up the throne for Jenny, and then he ends up dying right afterward. They both probably died. We don't know if Jenny died or not. She just disappeared, so she may have died. But yeah, that's like what seems to happen. Not too many people are happy for a long time. Jaehaerys and Alysanne that I mentioned before, they probably had the longest marriage and the longest, and even they had a couple big fights in there that they didn't talk for a couple years. But Jaehaerys was on the throne for 55 years, and he was by far the best king they ever had, and she was just as loved as he was. So they were a power couple, but they suffered so much tragedy in their lives still. So yeah, George doesn't want anyone to be truly happy. They always have to suffer in some way. Tormund and Brienne. Maybe Brienne will come to her senses and go after Tormund. Yeah, I mean the thing with Jaime, okay, this is why. Now I don't know if you've heard this or not, but when they did the prophecy in the show with Maggie the Frog, that Cersei was obsessed with, a few things were said. They said that her kids would be all basically, killed, and shrouds, gold, their shrouds would be. So that happened. The other parts of the prophecy that they mentioned was that a queen who was younger and more beautiful was going to take everything from her. She at first thought it was Marjorie. She was worried about it possibly being Sansa, which is why she kind of submarined Sansa and wanted to get rid of her. But then she thought it was Marjorie, and then she thought it was Dany. So she was trying to get rid of all these women, like these queens that could do that to her. But the one thing they left out of the show was that she was going to be killed by the Valonqar. And Valonqar, now they interpret it as being little brother. And this is why Cersei was so obsessed with killing Tyrion. When he was on trial and everything, she wanted Tyrion dead because she thought if he was dead, then he could not fulfill the Valonqar prophecy. Now, one thing we've learned again is in High Valyrian, sometimes the translation isn't exact. And it turns out that it could mean younger sibling, not just younger brother. But either way, at first, it didn't seem obvious, but Jaime is younger than Cersei. They're twins, but Cersei was born first. So it's always kind of been suspected that that's going to happen. Like Cersei has always been worried about Tyrion being the one that is going to kill her, and it's going to end up being Jaime because he is still the younger brother. That's been around for so long now, though. It's like I don't know if he'll change that. But then when you look at the translation as younger sibling, could it mean a younger sibling, not necessarily hers? So then people were saying, could it be Arya that kills her, though she is a younger sibling? I don't really know. I don't like that as much as it being Jaime, but that's why it was like, that's why she was so hell-bent on Tyrion being killed. Like she wanted Tyrion dead. And that's why I think they didn't show that in the show, probably because they knew that they were going to have these interactions with Tyrion and Cersei, and Cersei would have never let Tyrion just walk away, when she had the opportunity to kill him, because she thought that Tyrion was her death. I mean, and especially now that so much of the prophecy has come true. She's lost all her children, and there is a queen that is coming to take everything from her. So it's more about Cersei trying to stop this prophecy as just trying to stay alive and stay in control, so yeah, I just don't. So maybe that's why they didn't include that in the show, because they wanted to have these scenes with her and Tyrion, and they didn't think that would really happen if she was terrified that Tyrion was going to kill her. Yeah, I mean, we all thought that Jaime was going to. I thought that whole speech with Brienne, oh God, I hated it so much. I thought it was meant to be ambiguous. Like, we didn't know what he was going to do. Was he really going to save Cersei, or was he going to stop her? To try to stop her? Maybe a little of both. But I thought that it was purposely vague, and that's why I didn't like the writing, because I figured, if Jaime was going back because he wants to be with Cersei because he loves her and he wants to save her, well, then, again, you just threw away his whole character arc completely. You just threw it all away. And if he was going back to kill her or stop her, well, then that whole speech was just nothing but soap opera writing. I mean, you're just leaving it because you don't want the audience to know what he means. And I just think they should be above that. I just did not like that at all. I just don't think there was no reason that they had to do that. And I really don't want Brienne's last scene in the show to be her sitting there crying over Jaime. Oh, come on. She's such a kick-ass warrior woman. And that's how you want to leave the show with her. And and I know that people were saying that it gets getting too much into this whole real world stuff and feminism. And trust me, I am not the biggest feminist in the world. I mean, I'm an appropriate amount of feminist. But it is disappointing to see you have this, like I said, this warrior woman who is better at being a knight than any man on the show. And then yet you leave that last scene of her is with her just sitting there crying over a guy. That was really disappointing to see. Really disappointing. And maybe that's why they didn't want Arya to accept Gendry's proposal and be a lady, because it was okay, we can't have all the women being either crazy or subservient. But that's what they're doing. It's so it is true that it is disappointing. And it's not just from a feminist perspective, it's just from a writing perspective in general. And it goes along the lines of, I mean, primogeniture has been a huge thing throughout 300 years, that the Targaryens have been ruling. Many of these wars and things that have happened are because of girls being passed over for their younger brothers, or even in some cases, cousins, or, just as long as they're a man, and that has been an ongoing problem and thing that has caused rebellion and fights for all these years. And it's kind of weird because then you think about Cersei, who just like queen, she's crowned herself. So she just crowned herself. Who cares? I mean, technically she was not the heir, but she doesn't care. She just crowned herself as the queen. And that would not have sat well with a lot of people. You would not have seen too many people like coming to her side because they just didn't believe in a woman ruler. That's just the times, they just had a big problem with it. And that's why they're never, I mean, Rhaenyra Targaryen probably ruled for like 2 weeks. But she's not even in the list of previous rulers because it was such a short period of time. And it was more like like I said, it was during the Civil War that they had. Maybe Bronn will get Casterly Rock. I would really hope that Tyrion will live and he will get to be Lord of Casterly Rock. I would still like that. Obviously, Sansa can be, or possibly King of the Rock, and Sansa can be Queen of the North. I would be happy with that. I really would. I don't know what Jon would do, because even if he wanted to be Lord of Winterfell, he actually is not entitled to it. Well, I mean, technically he could be, I guess, but he's not Ned Stark's son. That was the biggest thing, was that you're Ned Stark's son and true heir, even though you're a bastard. But turns out he's not Ned Stark's son. But when I was just talking about how the heirs have always been boys, even if it's passing up a daughter, it can go to a cousin, whatever. And that would be true in Jon's case, that he would still be the heir, assuming that they couldn't talk Bran into being the Lord or the King of Winterfell. King of the North. So they, technically Jon could, but I hate this though. One thing I do hate, and again, I don't think it's being feminist, it's just that it's stupid. Like, suddenly Jon's not a Stark. He's every bit as Stark as he was before. It's like, just because you came from the man or you came from a woman and not the man, doesn't make you less of a Stark. He has the same amount of Stark blood that he had at the beginning when he thought Ned was his father. He's like, I'm not a Stark. Hello, your mother was. So clearly you are. Why do you think Robert Baratheon had a claim to the throne? His grandmother was a Targaryen, so he still had Targaryen blood, and he was still a Targaryen, even though he's a Baratheon. So his grandma and Rhaegar's grandfather, or could it be great-grandfather, were siblings, so it's like he actually had. It wasn't just that Robert usurped the throne, which they say he did, but he actually was the rightful heir after he killed Rhaegar and his family. Once he extinguished the line, Robert actually was the rightful heir because he's a Targaryen. Just because it's through a woman, his grandmother, his name's Baratheon. But it is annoying that somehow you don't belong to a family anymore, I guess, because you're only related through your mother and not your father. You're still a Stark, Jon. You just don't have that name, but, whatever. And there's all this talk, too, about how everybody would, swap to Jon's side if they found out. I thought they didn't want any Targaryens, period. How is Jon suddenly gonna be beloved because they find out he's a Targaryen? They have not had good experiences with Targaryens in recent history. Okay, the last one was the Mad King, and then now we have Dany coming and blowing everything up, and so it's like, why do they think that any Targaryen would make anyone happy? Yeah, Gendry has Targaryen blood, so he could be a dragon rider. It's not very much, it's several generations, but that's what happened with the dragon riders they found during the Dance of the Dragons. Some of them did have just essentially a drop of Targaryen blood, and they could ride a dragon. So technically, Gendry should be able to because he has Targaryen blood. It would be his great his great grandmother was a Targaryen. Aegon V's, I think they're Aegon V's siblings, I believe. So what else? I appreciate the ones that are talking in the chat, considering there's only 10 of you here or 9 of you here. thoughts on Gendry being Cersei and Robert's son? That supposedly died. That is not even a thing. Like Cersei never told this story of having another child in the books. And again, the prophecy is her having 3 children and 3 children dying. So them throwing in this 4th child really doesn't make any sense at all. So that was just made up crap for the show. Cersei, or and that's the thing too in the show. It's funny because Gendry ran and told Arya, he's like, "I'm no longer Gendry Rivers. I'm now Gendry Baratheon." He was never Gendry Rivers. He was Gendry Waters. He was born in the Crownlands, so his bastard name would be Waters. But yeah, his mother was trying to remember what his mother was. But his mother's known, and Robert acknowledged him. That's why he has a last name at all, even though they don't use it a lot. Only bastards that have highborn fathers that are acknowledged are given a last name. That's why Bronn has like no last name. He's just Bronn, and they kept calling him Bronn of the Blackwater. Gendry has gone by his last name, but he technically does have a last name. He's got the bastard name Waters, just like Jon has the bastard name Snow because his father is highborn and he was acknowledged. Even though he's a bastard, he was acknowledged by his father. So that's why now Robert has another bastard son that's in the books that actually has done most of the stuff that they give to Gendry in the show. Gendry was never leeched. He was never taken by Melisandre. Edric Storm was. And Edric Storm is another acknowledged bastard, but he's just a kid. He was only like 9 or 10 years old, I think, when Melisandre took him and leeched him. But it was the same thing otherwise. Davos helped him escape, but he sailed off on a ship. He wasn't rowing anywhere. He was on a ship and he was sent to Essos. And last I heard, I think he was in Lys or something like that. But so yeah, they gave a lot of Edric's storyline to Gendry because that never happened to Gendry in the books. Now that he's had a little taste of the noble life, he would probably rather be a bastard again. Yeah, I think Jon actually knows himself even less now. Like one thing about being a bastard is he never knew anything about his mother. And so there's a piece of him that has just kind of felt like he doesn't know who he is because he doesn't know who his mother is. But that's why he prided himself so much on being Ned Stark's son, because he did know his father and he wanted to be like his father. Now, I think both his parents died. Like his father died before he was even born. His mother died when he was born. And Ned didn't like to talk about Lyanna. And I don't know if that's just because he didn't want to accidentally say something that would give it away but they said that he never really talked about her. So Jon knows very little about Lyanna and he doesn't know anything about Rhaegar. I mean, why would he? So I think that Jon knows even less about himself than he did before, which is sad. A lot of chatter that Varys was able to get those notes off with ravens. He probably did. He was writing several, and I doubt that he was just stockpiling them. He was probably getting them sent out like as he was writing them. Who would he be sending them to? Probably the higher lords that are not Dany's supporters would probably be that. That's the only people that would really matter. Now again, I hate to be this person, but again, Varys, there's a whole different storyline. He's not even involved with Dany in the books. So he's actually backs another person. That's not even in the show. Huge part of the books, but not in the show. Citadel, Dorne, Iron Bank. Yeah, the Iron Bank, I mean, isn't part of Westeros. So they would have like no like voting power, but they have the financial power to back, like an army, even though the Golden Company was just wiped out. And that was the biggest sellsword company. That was the other thing is that when they kept saying that Dany, needed an army, I thought for sure they were setting it up for Daario to come back with the Second Sons from Essos or from Meereen. I thought for sure that's what they were setting up. And they didn't. I was disappointed that didn't happen either. Because they kept saying like he has the Golden Company, the biggest sellsword company in the world and the best. And how is she going to be able to get those kind of numbers? And I was like, Daario is the leader of the Second Sons, probably the second biggest sellsword company. And so I thought for sure that he would like arrive and come to Dany's aid, but it totally did not happen the way I thought. Like I said, she didn't even have the army I thought she had. So I was definitely not. It definitely didn't go down like how I thought it was going to do. So Varys probably did contact a lot of people or several people. And now there's going to be a lot of people that know. And it's just like how Dany told Jon, like it's going to take on a life of itself. It's not going to be about just, you don't want it, people are still going to try to back you, you know. Yeah, and I don't know what Dorne would do because there's just no love between Dorne and Targaryens, you know. But right now, in the current culture, um, the Dornish hate the the the, the Lannisters, you know, um, because of what they did, you know, to them. They killed so many people. I mean, obviously they're responsible for Oberyn. Um, and then what happened to the Sand Snakes and Alaria? I mean, they're all laying that on the Lannisters. So they're so desperate that they're actually willing to back a Targaryen. And like I said, there is not a lot of love because Dorne is the only kingdom that Aegon the Conqueror was not able to conquer. Dorne didn't become a part of the kingdom until years later with Daeron the Second. That's when they finally became part of the Seven Kingdoms. But they were that's where Queen Aegon's wife, Queen Rhaenys, and her dragon Meraxes were killed in Dorne. And every year they went with their dragons to try to conquer Dorne, and every time they couldn't do it. Dorne, and that's why I said it's so sad that Dorne was portrayed so stupidly because this is not a kingdom to be messed with. I mean, when they had like the storm lords and everything, and people from Highgarden and the Reach all marching into Dorne like used their poison. They poisoned the water system so that like everybody was dying along the way. And they either, I assume they had antidotes for themselves and they could drink the water. Because otherwise, I'm like, well, if you can't drink the water either, but like they're like a sneaky bunch of people, you know, and so that's when most of the people, the army died from poison because they poisoned the water and they're in a desert and yeah, so they ran out of food, they ran out of water, and then people were just dying from dehydration and stress, and that, so they could never conquer Dorne, even with the dragons, and they could never find them. Like they always disappeared whenever the dragons came in, and they try to like drive them out of the castles, and they'd never be there. Nobody knows where they ever went, but they were just never there. So yeah, so it's disappointing that Dorne was kind of so wimpy and stupid in the show because they are really a force to be reckoned with. Was it selfish of Dany to ask Jon not to say anything? Yeah, you're saying you thought it was. Well, yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, it was definitely about her. It was like, but and what's frustrating is like, is she? Well, I already know the answer, but is she saying it because she wants to be with him and she won't be able to be with him if people know, or is she saying it because she wants the Iron Throne? Well, she wants the Iron Throne. Like no matter what, that is her first and foremost. But yeah, it was selfish of her to ask that. I mean, her big thing has always been this is her right. She is the rightful heir. That has been her proclamation from day one, at least after Viserys was killed, that she is the rightful heir and they stole her throne. Well, now she found out all this time she actually isn't the rightful heir. And if she is going to proclaim that so often to so many people, then she should also abide by it. And I know it sucks because you spent your whole life thinking that, but that's not Jon's fault, you know, and knowing that Jon was her brother's son, the brother she talked about all the time that she never knew but loved and wanted to know more about him because he was kind and he was gentle and he was not like her crazy father, you know, and her crazy brother. And so like she should have honored that then, that if the rightful heir should be sitting on the Iron Throne, then that's Jon, not her. And again, that goes through, like I said, the primogeniture thing. Like, why is a daughter being passed over for a grandson? But it's just the way it is. Let's see what else. Anybody still with me? I have less people watching now. Yeah, so I'd mentioned that I didn't know if I was going to do one after the finale or anything, or like even the next day, but I don't think I'm going to bother. There's only like, I thought I'd have more than like 8 or 9 people. People might watch later maybe, but yeah, I don't know. Saturday nights are tough sometimes. People busy. So yeah, even a friend of mine was just saying, like, I've been waiting to chat with you about this. And I'm like, I don't know where she is. Oh, maybe she thought, no, because I put the YouTube link up. Maybe some people thought I was going to be in my group, but I put the YouTube link. I couldn't use my pretty new thing if I was doing it in my Facebook group. No, since this wasn't a legal thing, I didn't want to do it in the group. Well, that's the thing. Misty, I thought about doing one tomorrow, but again, like I was kind of see how it went tonight, and I only have like a handful of people that have been watching the entire time. So I've been watching it any time. I have not had more than 9 people in this entire time. It's been an hour and 45 minutes. It's kind of sad. So, I mean, I could. I mean, if there's just one person that wants to talk about it, I guess I can. I just don't know because I thought about you actually but since you're 2 hours behind, you don't get to watch it until a time that would probably be too late for me to even do it with for most people. I don't. It's again, that's the thing. What time would I do it? Because it's a longer episode. So for me, it'll end at 9:30. That means like 10:30 for like people on the East Coast. And then is it on for 8 o'clock for you? So you won't even be watching it until like 10 o'clock my time. Oh, you will watch it at 6 your time. So it's on at the same time. Oh, okay. Well, maybe I will then. Maybe I'll pop in at like 9:30, like right after it's done. Or a little while after. I need to absorb. So maybe 10 o'clock Central Time. Hmm. So yeah, if people that are here now want to come back later after the finale and we can see what happens, since I talk about speculation, but I really have no idea because I think so much has already gone not the way that I thought, but not in a good way. Like it's just, like I don't mind having twists and turns, but they have to make sense. So Lisa, you're on the West Coast then. I mean on the East Coast, so 9 p.m. for you. So it'd be 11 o'clock your time, which is kind of late on a Sunday. Yeah, I always watch it. Well, actually, I did watch it live last week. We were on our way home from Syracuse, and we didn't know where we were going to stay that night, but we just knew whatever hotel we were staying at, they better have HBO. So yeah, we watched it when we were on the road. And I usually try to watch it on the app because then you can watch the inside the episode afterward. But I didn't get to do that last week, and I never went back to watch that. I think I don't care what Dan and Dave have to say anymore. I'm just irritated with them. Right, and I think that anybody, even if you haven't read the books, I think you can see how rushed it is because again, I think what I was telling Misty was that, the thing with Littlefinger last season, yeah, it was only 7 episodes, but still, like they had this buildup of him doing his scheming and trying to turn them against each other, and it was a slow build to where you really thought that Arya and there's a chance that Arya and Sansa were going to turn on each other until you had that great moment in the last episode. Or was it the second last episode? Whichever, but where they turned on him, and then they had that trial. It really wasn't much of a trial. That's the type of thing I would have expected for Varys too, to kind of have this build up to see his scheming. What was he actually doing? And then have him get caught and then be executed. I said this. I don't think it was fair to his character. Varys is such a huge character, and they minimized him more in the books. I mean, in the show, but he's such a great character, and he's been so involved in everything, like behind the scenes. He's always been like manipulating things, and to just have him be like gotten rid of like that quick in just a few minutes, it was like, okay, yeah, that was not satisfying. Like I always expected Varys was going to die. I always did because you can't be, do what he does and expect to live with how many times he switched allegiances and everything. And it's kind of ironic too because it was Varys that actually saved Dany from the poison. If you remember back in the first season when somebody tried to poison Dany and Jorah stopped it, it was Varys that sent the note or the raven to Jorah to let him know about the poison. So Varys actually saved her life a long time ago, and then he gets killed. Too bad. I don't know. I was sick of Littlefinger, so I was happy to see him go. But I thought he went out in a great way. Like I thought it was just such a satisfying and how they just turned everything on him. And then Bran freaks him out with the whole chaos as a ladder thing, which I think was actually a little earlier than that. But no, he didn't because that's how Littlefinger knew he was beat. Like he couldn't get out of it because clearly Bran knew something that he didn't think anybody knew. He knew that he betrayed Ned and everything. And that's why I thought it was so satisfying. Now, I never hated Varys like I hated Littlefinger because no matter what, Varys is like, he was always true to the realm. not himself. That he was always honest about. And even though he did some pretty despicable things and his character was questionable at times, he really did always have the realm's best interest at heart. He truly did. Like, he was always going to do what was best for the people, even if that meant killing kings and, and usurping kings, doing whatever he had to do. And so it's sad that he just always went about it the wrong way. For him, it was the right way. But that's why and I thought it was interesting because he told Dany, like Dany specifically asked him or told him, she brought up the fact that he had turned on so many kings. And she said, promise me, if you have a problem with me or something I'm doing, please come to me instead of plotting against me. She told him to do that. So, I mean, with the way they have Dany acting, I mean, she probably would have killed him either way for just even suggesting that she was wrong. But, like, you could kind of see it coming because of that. Like, he could have went to her and said, I don't like what you're doing. I don't like that you're running it like this. This isn't how to win over the people, because he would know how to win over the people. And yeah, and the other thing about Dany, like, wanting everyone to love her, like, that's not really the biggest concern for Targaryens. Some of them did. Some of them actually, did care about how the people felt about them and did want people to love them. But most of them didn't give a shit. They just didn't. They're like, I don't care if you like me. Whatever. So it was weird for Dany to just snap because people didn't love her. Like, Targaryens aren't supposed to care about that. Yeah, Varys was, I said, he was a great character. He's even better in the books because you can see more of the spider, and his little birds and a lot of the behind the scenes machinations. And he even didn't completely betray Ned Stark. He tried to warn Ned Stark, like he could only go so far without worrying about his own head. But it wasn't like Littlefinger, who completely like lied to him and then betrayed him. Like, Varys was trying to warn him, like, get out, go back to the north, and he didn't listen. And so Varys at least tried. He could have been a little more clear and been like, they're gonna kill the king and you're gonna get killed next, so you need to go. But, he tried at least a little bit. So that's more than anybody else did. And, and let's face it, Qyburn was just weird. He was never as fun. He was just never as fun. And Varys was entertaining. Like, he and Tyrion were entertaining. Their conversations were entertaining. They were funny. They were kind of weird sidekicks. Not as funny and weird as Arya and the Hound being sidekicks. They're still the best. I still want like an Arya and the Hound roadshow or something like that, because that would be the best. All right. So is there anything else? Because like I said, if you start getting me into the history and stuff, I can be here all day. Qyburn was creepy. He really was. And I did think his death was amazing because I couldn't figure out who was going to kill Qyburn. And so it was very fitting. Again, it's somewhat poetic. It's just like Frankenstein and the doctor. And he built this Frankenstein, and that Frankenstein ended up killing him. And just the way he killed him, like, you like, go away, peasant. Yeah, he just slams his head against the wall. And I was like, that was actually pretty awesome. It was a very quick death, but it was very satisfying. Euron Greyjoy's death, not satisfying. It was a lame fight between him and Jaime, and then for him to sit there like, I killed the Kingslayer, like, okay, really? Oh my God. He'd be pissed that he was dying. Like, you can't have a guy that's got that kind of ego and then have him just be like laughing when he's dying. No, he would have been pissed. And I still think it should have been Yara that killed him. Asha. She's Asha in the books, but Yara in the show. Yeah, he and Tyrion were good together. I mean, Tyrion's pretty much good with everybody. But he was really good with him. That's why I like Davos too, though. Davos has just got this humor when he shouldn't. Like, he's seen so many terrible things. He, obviously was devastated over losing Shireen and had to follow this king that he didn't really believe in because he thought he was nuts with Melisandre. But yet, Davos always still seems to have a little bit of a sense of humor. He always has a good comeback for things, and that's why I love him. And he is truly the most moral character in the show, by far. Can't believe you missed all this live. I was wondering where people were because, like, I've not had anybody. I've had like 9 people. I don't want to say anybody because that'd be rude to the people who are here. But I've not had more than 10 people this entire time. And with everybody talking about Game of Thrones, I thought I'd have more. I didn't, but that's okay. I appreciate the people that are here. I just like talking to Game of Thrones. I'll sit here and talk to myself all day. Just saying. So if anybody, I think even if you've seen the show, I still recommend reading the books. Very much so. They are so much better. And it's crazy that you can read a book so many times and still get new things. And it's pretty awesome how, like, in the first 50 pages of the very first book, you'll find out, like, in the fifth book, that they foreshadowed something that happened in the fifth book all the way back in those first 50 pages. It's crazy how well thought out this is. And that's why Martin has had trouble with this one. He described it as the Myronese knot. He couldn't figure out how to get Dany out of Meereen, and that's why he really struggled with Winds of Winter and how to get her out of there. He just couldn't seem to write something he was happy with. And George will write things from a bunch of different perspectives because he writes these from the point of view. His books are written as point of view chapters. So one chapter will be, Tyrion, and the next chapter will be Jon, and then it'll be Sansa, and then Dany. There are only certain point of view characters. And so he will sometimes write a chapter from several different points of view if the characters are all in the scene. And then he'll pick which one he thinks is the best, that he wants to provide more of the inner monologue. So that obviously takes a lot of time. And he has to plan it all out. And he writes in DOS. Not even joking. And he will not work anywhere but his home. So when he's on the road, when he's at conventions, when he's doing other things, he won't write. But this is why. When he wrote the World of Ice and Fire, he ended up having so much leftover material. That's why they decided to do Fire and Blood. And Fire and Blood was supposed to be like a certain amount of words, and he went over it by hundreds of thousands of words, which is now why there's going to be a part 2. He is very good at creating this entire world, and he doesn't make too many mistakes. Every once in a while, you'll find something that doesn't make sense. And it's funny because in Fire and Blood, they kind of retconned certain things in A World of Ice and Fire because he realized later with the story he wanted to tell that, like, the birth order of certain kids didn't work. So he switched up. He actually eliminated a kid and made a new one. But he admitted it. He put out a family tree right before Fire and Blood was released, and just so everybody knows, I made some changes. Just ignore them. But and he writes them though from the point of view of a maester, so that it's like a real history book. Like, you're not going to get all the answers because history is what people write about it. You if you're not there, you only have to go by what people have written. And so these history books are written from the point of view of different sources. And sometimes there just are no answers. And when George brings up something, though, and then doesn't flesh it out, that means that he's not sure what he wants to do with it yet, but something will come later. He'll bring up a character, have a really cool character, but then not say what happened to them. And that's like, he hasn't figured it out yet. He'll do it in the next book. But they are really amazing. He is phenomenal. Yes. Yeah, I mean, he did think originally this story was supposed to be a trilogy. Can you imagine him trying to write this in 3 books? And he said that he wants to be done in 7, but I do think that he can't stop writing. He just can't stop writing. It's like he gets, and it's so fleshed out, it's so detailed. I don't know how he does it, but he does, and he has a hard time keeping things straight himself, though. But again, World of Ice and Fire is an overall history book. Doesn't go into a lot of details of things, but it's a great book. It's an awesome coffee table book. I actually have the Kindle and the regular version because it's such a pretty book. But otherwise, I usually like Kindle. And then Fire and Blood. And I actually recommended, I told Misty, I said, like, I would personally probably read Fire and Blood first because that's the more detailed thing. So for World of Ice and Fire, then you don't necessarily have to read all the Targaryen stuff because it's covered in such better detail in Fire and Blood. But then you can read the other stuff on Westeros, on Essos. Obviously, read the 5-book series. Now, one thing that I did is that books 4 and 5 are weird. Okay, it's one big book, and George had to cut it in half, just like what I'm going to call you D because that's all I can see there. But it said that he might have too much material for too many books. Well, that's what happened with the 4th and 5th books. He had enough material for 2 books, and he didn't know how to divide it. So he ended up dividing it sort of geographically, which was weird. So when, you know, we were waiting for the fourth book to come out, it was weird because there are characters that are completely left out of it. There's no John in the fourth book, no Danny in the fourth book. You know, like he just did it. So it's like they're chronologically happening at the same time. But book 4 deals with the people in like in Westeros and like that are part of the Seven Kingdoms. Whereas then book 5 deals with the stuff going on in Essos and with the stuff going on beyond the wall. So it was weird. But what I did on my second read was somebody has actually put out there all the chapters listed if you want to read it in chronological order. And that means you have to go back and forth between 4th and 5. You like read one chapter here, one chapter here, sometimes 2 chapters in 4, one chapter in 5. So it's in chronological order. I loved reading it like that. I would not recommend it doing it the first time through, but I just got such a different perspective reading it that way. It's a little hard because you have to bounce back and forth, but it actually is really good. And it gets a little tedious at times because sometimes you will have 2 chapters from different points of view, like of the 2 people involved. So you'll read the chapter first from like John's point of view, and then you'll read it from Sam's point of view. Um, so yeah, so that's a little different, but that's something that I would recommend someone that's already read it. If you want to do a reread, try that. And then I would also recommend reading the Dunk and Egg series. And that is involving Aegon V, who I mentioned before, and Duncan the Tall. Their stories are great. They're great. I love them. There's 3 novellas, but now they were combined into a collection called Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And that's funny because, as I said, that like Duncan the Tall is actually an ancestor of Brienne's. And the episode where Jenny's song was in, the second episode was actually called A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. So their little adventures are really fun. And Dunk and Egg, because Aegon went by Egg. And Aegon V is Maester Aemon from the Wall that was close with John. That's his brother. Like he's Aegon V. And he talks about Aegon V, about how one of the reasons that Maester Aemon took the Black was because they never wanted to try to turn him against his brother. He didn't want people to try to push him to be king instead of his brother. Because Aegon V was chosen by a great council, because he was the 4th son of the 4th son. That's why he's called Aegon the Unlikely, because no one ever thought he'd be king. But they didn't want, Aemon didn't ever want anyone to be able to use him against his brother. So that's why he took the Black and became a maester. And he told John that story. Yeah, Dunk and Egg was a great little series. Oh, and that is heavily involved with another great, to me, what would be a great prequel, and that is the Blackfyre Rebellion. And that Dunk and Egg is very heavily involved in the Blackfyre Rebellion. And I love those stories. It's pretty. Aegon IV is a piece of crap. He is seriously the worst king. He is like Westeros's like Henry VIII. And he was the worst king. Really was, as far as a ruler goes. And he caused, like, because of him and his stupid decisions, like it caused 100 years of rebellion, or 75 years, something like that, of rebellion with the Blackfyres. And that's really good. And that's in the Dunk and Egg series. And then obviously in the history, there's A World of Ice and Fire. They talk about the Blackfyre rebellions. They're not in Fire and Blood because we haven't gotten to Aegon V yet. But they'll be more fleshed out there, and those are really good. I would love to see that as a prequel. And again, no dragons, so it wouldn't be no direwolves. So again, not as expensive. So I would highly recommend reading them all. If you don't want to start with the history stuff, and you want to start smaller, read the Dunk and Egg books. Again, like there's three novellas and not as long, but you'll get a good feel for Martin's writing style and for the world and from some of the history. Yeah, I agree. I just saw your comment where you said, I've given up on HBO, Winds of Winter, where are you? Yeah, I hope it comes out soon. Part of me thinks that once the show passed the books, that Martin kind of just like gave up a little bit. I know there's been speculation that he was waiting till the show was over now, but I just don't see that, because it wouldn't matter, because the Winds of Winter isn't going to change. It isn't going to give away the ending. So there's no reason to wait to publish that. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like, it'd be nice. I mean, like, I don't think the Blackfyres are ever going to totally be gone. They think they are. They always think they are, but I don't think the Blackfires are. I think they're always going to be a problem, and they don't know where the sword Blackfire is. So yeah, they don't know where that sword is. So probably with the Descendants somewhere. And he's supposed to be coming out with another Dunk and Egg book too. I'm hoping that's coming out soon. I think he meant to have another one done already, but yeah, I think they're great. Aegon is such a, it's tragic how Aegon ended up because he was such a funny kid. He was just, because these stories take place when Aegon's a boy, and he's such a pain in the butt. And he drives Duncan crazy. And but I love him. I love Egg. Okay, so I'm looking. I probably have like 3 people left. Let's see how many are watching. Oh, I have 10. This is the most I've had. Yay! I'm so excited for my 10 watchers. Maybe I keep talking, more people show up. Okay, so have I thoroughly bored you all now? Has anybody found this interesting at all? Please say yes. Or if I've totally bored you, then I apologize. I know, it's like, and I do recognize the fact that just because I find this interesting doesn't mean that everybody does. And I know it can be annoying for show watchers when they say the books did this, the books did that. But I think it's good to know at least some of the backdrop, some of the history, and some of the stuff to just kind of flesh it out more. I mean, like I said, like if you just like if you only watch a show and Pod saying Jenny's song, you're just like, okay, what a weird little song. You know, why are you talking about Jenny and these ghosts? But it, like I said, the book just has so much meaning, and it's so much about the history is covered in that, and that's why it's cool. Yeah, but you see, like since you've read all of Martin there, though, D. I hate calling you just D, but yeah, clearly you won't find it boring. Anybody that's read the books will not find this boring because you'll be as big of a nerd as me when it comes to Game of Thrones. And I know I'm getting Misty to read these books, whether she likes it or not. She's gonna start. It can take a while, but I had a hard time. I am not a fantasy reader. I am not. I've never read Lord of the Rings. Sorry, Tolkien. And I know that there's a lot from these books that are like kind of an homage or similar to books in there, or plot lines in there, characters in there. I've never read it. I've never read The Hobbit. I've never read any of them, and I'm a reader, but I've just never been into fantasy at all. And so it was a friend of mine that kept saying, "You have to read these books. You have to read the book. They're so good." And I actually read the books before I watched the show. So at least the ones that were already out before the show. And it took me, I swear, I tried to start the book like 10 times. It was so hard for me to get into just because you start out right away with this supernatural element with being beyond the wall and the others. And then I wasn't used to this point of view type of writing. It was very strange. And it was actually kind of confusing because the first chapter, I think, it says Eddard. And yet then they're talking to this guy named Ned. And I'm like, who's Ned? Like, who's Eddard? I didn't even realize they were the same person. Like, it took a while for me to get into it. And I just kept starting over. I kept reading the first 10 pages. And I was like, oh my God. Like my friend is swearing at me. This is so good. You have to read it. And yet, I just couldn't get into it. But then once I got past like those first like 30 pages, I could not put them down. These books are long. These are not like 5 like 200-page books. Okay, these are like 5 400+ page books, and yet I could not put them down. And as soon as I was done, I wanted to read them again. Well, I think it's great that you can have these books that have been out for over 20 years, and yet people can still talk about it and can find things in there. And yeah, that's what makes you a little geeky for wanting to do this, but it's cool. It's cool when you find these connections and these prophecies that don't seem to make much sense in the moment, but then all of a sudden you go back and you think, oh my gosh, like that's what it, that actually makes sense. They're connected. It's very much the same. I don't, I'm bad at watching YouTube videos, and I like to listen to podcasts, but I'm just like bad at doing it sometimes. I don't listen to many. I like all the ones I used to listen to, I don't want to listen to anymore. And not that I don't want to, I just don't have the time to do. I mean, I do have the time, But I used to listen when I was driving a lot. I don't drive that much anymore. So just at home, I don't listen to podcasts too often. Usually because I'm in my Facebook group or I'm getting ready to do something like this. And I'm answering questions there. And I just can't get out of Facebook, which lately I have been, and I apologize for that. But I'm kind of been on a break. And today was the first day I opened my laptop. This is the first time I opened my laptop in a week and a half. And I can't say I missed it. I like just not being chained to my laptop. Anyway, so yeah, so once I started reading these books, like I just got really into them and I wanted to read them right away again. And then I think I next read the Dunk and Egg stories. And then because World of Ice and Fire and Blood didn't come out till later. So I read the first Dunk and Egg and I think I had to wait for the next one to come out. But yeah, I want to read everything and get my hands on. Oh, so what I was going to say was that the only podcast I listen to now for Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire is History of Westeros. And they focus a lot on the history. During the show, they actually do 3 shows a week. They do a show only review, they do a book to show review to talk about some of the things that could possibly happen, like, or that could correlate with the books. And then they do a prediction episode. And obviously today was like the last predictions episode because no more new episodes. But their regular schedule are doing these very in-depth historical like podcasts, like talking about the history and it's my favorite podcast. I love it. I think it's a little weird sometimes because they have people doing the voices of like people reading it. It's sometimes comical, but other than that, but the content is amazing. They'll have like 8 episodes on the Blackfire Rebellion, or they dedicate like episodes to each character. They just did all the Fire and Blood ones when Fire and Blood came out. And so if you like the history at all, or you read the books and you want to more listen to History of Westeros, I said when they started out, it wasn't the same people who started it. It was very amateurish. They've definitely upgraded their equipment and everything since then. So, but even if you watch some of the show ones, and they can be a little long, but look at I've been on for 2 hours. Their shows are usually 2 hours, and they start out on YouTube, so you can do chat with live stream, and then they release it as a podcast after that. Yeah, I don't like the actors narrating things. I just don't. I mean, and I don't mind like audiobooks and stuff, but one of the ones I was just listening to was doing a voice for the Three-Eyed Raven, and it sounded like the person was dying, and I was like, oh my God, I'll just read it myself. Like it takes me out of it, and it's like so over dramatic, and so that part I don't like. I don't like them reading the excerpts, like trying to act it out and using these voices because it's just comical to me. That's the only thing I don't like. But other than that, the content is good. Extremely knowledgeable. There's not much they don't know about these stories. It amazes me how they can remember so many details when there's so much material. But it's just really interesting to listen to. And yeah, it's helpful if you read the books because it wouldn't make much sense. But but that I would definitely recommend it. Radio Westeros is good too, but I haven't listened to that in a while. But they're good. So Song of Ice and Fire is better than Lord of the Rings. Good. I don't think I could commit to another fantasy thing. I don't know if I'll ever read another fantasy series again after this, but I'm definitely obsessed with it. And it's funny because I go through this like every year when the show comes back on. Like it takes me like 6 months to stop talking about Game of Thrones. I'm thinking about Game of Thrones and rereading stuff. And then I get like 6 months where I don't think about it much. And then the show would come back on. And I'm like, oh God, now I gotta start all over. I gotta start reading again and start listening to stuff again. I'm trying to think of what else that I can talk about. I didn't prepare at all, so I'm just talking off the top of my head about certain things that have happened this season, throughout the show, what I've liked, what I haven't liked. Yeah, so I don't know. If Dany survives, which at this point I'm thinking is unlikely, but if Dany survives, I don't see her staying in Westeros. I think she'd go back. Maybe she can be the Queen of Essos. She conquered a few cities, but maybe she can conquer all of Essos, which might be harder. And we still don't know a lot about the other continents, Sithorios and Ulthos. We don't know much about those. So George, you know, I'm not sure George is going to live long enough to do as much of the world as he wants to do. That's sad to say, but true. And I don't think it's not like the Wheel of Time series. Like if George dies, I don't know if anybody would be able to complete them because he is very like I said, he has his method of how he writes things, and he doesn't give copies to people, and he doesn't tell people his plans. So I don't know what will happen. And he gets pissed about that because people think, because it's been a big thing where people say he's going to die before he's going to write both books because he's not exactly the picture of health. You know, he's like a very overweight guy, and he gets mad about that. But I'm sorry, but it's a valid complaint. It's like, can you just turn those out, please, or at least give an outline? Now, I know his wife said one time that she'd be pissed at him, that she'd never talk to him again if he killed off Arya or Sansa. So maybe they'll survive just because of that, but I don't think he'd let that stop him. Nobody's chatting anymore, so I don't know what to say. I need a drink anyway. A good drink, just a diet drink. And I'm sorry to everyone, because there's like loads of people here. I'm sorry to the few people that came in late and had to miss everything from the beginning, but you can go back and watch if you're interested. Again, I do a lot of book to show stuff and everything, and I hope that doesn't bore people too much. And I don't really want to ruin anything for people either that are planning on reading them. Those are definitely some jaw-dropping moments and shocks and twists, and like I am so glad that I got to experience the Red Wedding in the book before I got to see, before the show came along. So that was definitely shocking. And that's totally different too. I don't know if people knew, but they changed his wife's name for number one. Robb married Jane Westerling in the books, and she's still alive, and she's not pregnant. She was not at the Red Wedding. So Robb was killed, and it was actually her family that helped plot against Robb. And secretly, she did not know this, but her mother was giving her that tansy seed oil, I think it was, that helps prevent pregnancy. I think Cersei was drinking this at one time in the show when she was having all her affairs, her affair with Lancel for sure. So that Robb's wife was drinking that. Her mother was giving it to her, and she didn't know because they didn't want her to get pregnant because they were plotting against Robb and definitely didn't want to deal with an heir. So I guess they decided to change it because they weren't going to bring the family into it in the show. So they gave him a wife that was completely different, a foreigner, like I don't know. And then they made her pregnant and they made sure to kill her because it was more tragic, I guess. But yeah, that did not happen in the books. That does not happen. He does not. His wife is still alive, and she's just pretty much a non-thing now because she serves no purpose. But her family, the Westerling family, helped plot against him. I don't think that's really giving away anything huge because the wedding itself and what happens is the shocking part. It's just like if Catelyn doesn't kill his wife, she kills the fool, I think. Yeah. Oh, it's not. It's a son. It's a son, but I think the son had issues, and so he was like made to be the court jester, the court fool, and I think that's who she kills. God, it's been a while since I've read it, so I'm trying to remember, but I think so. All right. Anyone else have anything to say? Because otherwise, I'm going to probably wrap it up because I don't want to just keep talking to myself. Even though I could do it, but just pick a topic and I'll just go rambling on for a couple hours. All right. Let's see how many people are still here. Yeah, a few people have dropped off, so it's only 7 now. I went from 10. I got all excited when I had 10 people, and now I've only got 7. So, all right. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. It's been almost 2.5 hours. It's crazy how time flies. But thanks for being here with me, and I guess I can go live tomorrow night at, like I said, I think the show is close to an hour and a half, and so that would be 9:30 my time that would be ending. So maybe 10 o'clock Central Time tomorrow. And I don't know if I'm going to bother posting about it because it didn't seem to help this time. So I don't know. I might put it in the group again. I put it on Twitter and like one person liked it. That was it. So yeah, people just only care about the Making a Murderer stuff. I guess they don't really care about other stuff. And it's been fun to talk about something else, especially something that I love so much, even though it frustrates me at times, but something that is just fun to talk about and not thinking about the case and everything because it's quite the downer. So it was kind of fun to talk about something else. I don't really have much else to talk about, so that's why it was like when I had the choice, I was like, oh, this is something I can talk about, even though I probably don't want everyone to know what a nerd I am. But I am. I'm proud. I'm a proud nerd. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. And then I will probably see you guys tomorrow night or see some of you here tomorrow night and we can discuss the finale. And hopefully it will be somewhat satisfying. Don't know, but we'll see. So I am going to sign off. But thanks again to the handful of you that have been here with me. And thanks for being active in the chat. So, all right, see ya. Everybody have a good night.